Aiden Kane never expected the Andaris expanse to throw him an alien with more attitude than a hyperdrive engine on a bad day. The first thing he noticed about her, after the obvious, like the way she could leap 20 feet in a single bound, and the way her eyes shimmered like two miniature galaxies, were her ears. Long, elegant, tapering in a way that made him wonder if evolution had played a joke on her species. They twitched when she heard the hum of the nearby star, flicked nervously when the airlock hissed, and even seemed to angle toward the rhythm of the ship's failing gravity. He tried to make a joke about it. You know, if you ever start a band, you could call it the listening ears. She did not laugh. Instead, she drew an energy blade and glared, which was Aiden's first real lesson in interspecies humor being mostly a one-sided experience. Her name was Lysera, though she only offered it after Aiden successfully dodged a misfired plasma bolt while tumbling backward into a stack of supply crates. Her first words were not friendly. "Are you always this incompetent?" she asked, voice sharp enough to cut titanium, or at least that was the claim she made with a dramatic flick of her ears. Aiden, still tangled in packing foam, quipped, "Depends on who's asking. You." She did not respond immediately, probably because she was reassessing whether humans were worth killing before breakfast. By the third hour of their awkward encounter, it was clear that survival required cooperation, though neither wanted to admit it. Lysera had been trained for war. Everything about her screamed discipline, precision, and danger. But the universe had a cruel sense of timing. Her starcruiser had crashed on the mining moon, thanks to a navigational AI convinced that asteroids were sentient beings, and thus unworthy of being avoided. Aiden's orders were simple: rescue any sentient life. His orders were complicated: survive long enough to do it without looking like a complete fool. Somehow, both objectives collided spectacularly when Lysera tripped over a loose grav cable and landed in a zero-gravity spin, colliding with Aiden in a heap. "You humans are heavier than you look," she hissed, her ears flattened in irritation. "Thanks. That's the nicest thing anyone said to me all day," Aiden replied, floating upright while trying to straighten a gravity-stabilizing harness that had twisted around his leg. Their first meals were equally challenging. Lysera eyed the Synthrasian packs with suspicion. "This smells primitive," she said, wrinkling her nose. Aiden opened one, sniffed, and immediately recoiled. "Agreed. But it's edible if you don't mind the aftertaste of melted starship flooring." She stared at him, trying to calculate whether he was lying or insane. "Both," he offered, she groaned. As they worked together to scavenge supplies, the aliens' combat instincts frequently clashed with Aiden's improvisational methods. Every encounter with scavenger drones became a comedy of errors. Lysera would slash at the nearest target with deadly precision, while Aiden accidentally triggered a zero-gravity sprinkler system that sent both of them spinning through the air like flailing comets. Lysera landed on a pile of cargo crates, groaning, and muttered, "You're lucky I don't consider you a moving target." Aiden, upside down, waved apologetically. "That's my charm, terrifying and confusing in equal measure." Even in life-or-death scenarios, humor became a survival tool. When a rogue maintenance robot lunged at them, Aiden grabbed a canister of anti-grav gel and accidentally flung it at the robot's sensors. The robot spun wildly, hitting a control panel that set off a chain reaction of warning lights, sirens, and an inexplicable disco strobe effect. Lysera, amidst dodging sparks and sparks of sarcasm, finally laughed. It was brief, almost hesitant, but it was a crack in her armor, and Aiden noticed immediately. "See," he said, catching his breath. "Sometimes the universe just wants you to dance." Their trust, fragile and reluctant, grew through ridiculous misadventures. Aiden learned to interpret Lysera's subtle ear flicks as indicators of mood, suspicion, or impending attacks. She, in turn, began to tolerate his human stubbornness and odd sense of humor, occasionally using it as a distraction tactic when enemies approached. Conversations flowed between them like unpredictable streams. Lysera lecturing on tactical formations. Aiden arguing about why no self-respecting human should be expected to walk in a gravity field without tripping at least once. They debated, joked, and sometimes screamed at malfunctioning equipment together, creating a rhythm that felt dangerously like camaraderie. By the time they reached the edge of the mining crater, battered and laughing at a misfired grav missile that had buried itself halfway in a pile of moon dust, Lysera hesitated. She had been a warrior all her life, raised to see survival as the only form of affection, to view companionship as a liability. Yet here she was, having just ducked a swarm of micro-drones while floating upside down, and she realized she had relied on a human, messy, sarcastic, fallible, but unwaveringly present. Her long ears twitched in a way that might have been amusement, or maybe something far more dangerous, curiosity about life beyond war. Aiden looked at her, wincing as a small piece of debris floated into his hair, and grinned. So, Lysera, next time we survive a near-death experience, you teach me your ear-twitching communication trick. Her ears twitched, almost imperceptibly. You might survive long enough to regret asking, she replied. Aiden laughed, the sound echoing against the hollow mining shafts. Somehow, in the middle of galactic chaos, two beings from opposite worlds had found the beginnings of understanding, and a sense of humor that could, improbably, survive even the deadliest corners of space. Aiden had never considered that teaching someone to survive a battle was easier than teaching them how to make toast without causing a fire in zero gravity. But Lysera seemed determined to prove him wrong. The first morning aboard the salvaged shuttle, she approached the grav kitchen like it was a battlefield. Her long ears twitched in constant irritation, scanning every floating utensil as if they might explode. "This contraption is inefficient," she muttered, poking at a synth food dispenser. "Why not just compress the nutrients into a single cube? Less risk of accidental combustion." Aiden, juggling 3 mugs of synth coffee, tried to suppress a grin. "Because then you'd miss the fun of almost dying while making breakfast. It builds character." Lysera's glare suggested that humans had invented sarcasm solely to confuse alien species. When the coffee machine erupted in a puff of pink vapor, she tilted her head, ears flicking back. "Fun? You call this fun?" "Absolutely," Aiden said, blowing a cloud of hot vapor away from his face. "You'll laugh about it later. Probably when we're older. Or dead. One of those two." She muttered something under her breath that sounded like a curse in 4 different dialects, and Aiden made a note to never get on her bad side. The shuttle hummed through the remnants of the Andaris expanse like a tired cat avoiding a puddle. Lysera spent the journey trying to teach Aiden combat maneuvers, which mostly involved him tripping over himself, improvising wildly, and occasionally knocking her into the control console. "Do not underestimate your environment," she barked as a warning light flashed. "Your clumsiness is catastrophic." "I call it creative problem-solving," Aiden countered, ducking a floating wrench. "Keeps the universe guessing." By the 3rd day, they had developed a routine that balanced survival, teaching, and the occasional chaos that Aiden insisted was necessary for morale. He tried introducing her to human leisure. Holochess, the concept of puns, and, in a controversial move, Earth sitcoms. Lysera, seated awkwardly in a grav chair, watched with wide, skeptical eyes as a character tripped over a banana peel projected in holographic 3D. "This is entertainment?" she asked. "They intentionally injure themselves for amusement." "Exactly," Aiden replied. "And somehow we survive the trauma of watching it every week." She didn't laugh, but her ears twitched in a way he considered progress. A more pressing challenge arrived when their navigation system went haywire near a rogue asteroid cluster. Aiden suggested rerouting through a nearby nebula, which he confidently described as a scenic detour. Lysera, ears pinned back in alarm, recalculated trajectories faster than any human could process, and then muttered, "You are reckless in ways that endanger life itself." "I prefer the term charmingly reckless," he said, add spice to an otherwise boring day. The nebula was a swirl of violet and gold plasma storms that danced around the shuttle like invisible ribbons. Aiden and Lysera clung to consoles, dodging ion flashes and occasionally bumping heads, sparks of static electricity jumping between them. Aiden grinned despite the chaos. "See, I told you it would be scenic. Remind me to write this into my travel brochure. Nebula vacations, bring earplugs and a helmet." Lysera's expression was stoic, but she caught herself smiling when the shuttle made a particularly daring pass near a plasma geyser. Her ears twitched involuntarily as if acknowledging that maybe, just maybe, danger could be entertaining. Aiden noticed and made a mental note that humor, oddly, was a form of diplomacy. Evenings were worse, because zero gravity meant exhaustion didn't result in neat sleep cycles. Instead, they floated like drifting meteors, sharing stories in the dim light of flickering control panels. Aiden told tales of human absurdity. Bureaucracies so tangled they made interstellar law look simple, and engineers who built gadgets that seemed designed to explode at random. Lysera, in return, described training sequences that sounded like a mixture of martial art and extreme simulation games, where failure meant humiliation or worse. She spoke with such precision and intensity that Aiden had to remind himself she wasn't a machine. One evening, as a micrometeor shower lit the viewport with streaks of silver, Lysera turned to him with a rare question. "Do humans ever pause?" she asked, ears flicking uncertainly, "to consider life beyond the immediate task?" Aiden nearly choked on his synth tea. "Yes," he said, coughing, "mostly when we're too tired to care about anything else. Or when we're forced to float helplessly in space with an alien who constantly judges our culinary skills." Lysera didn't laugh, but the corner of her mouth twitched. Progress. Teaching Lysera about ordinary life became a delicate dance between instruction and improvisation. He showed her how to adjust grav chairs without flipping into the ceiling, how to handle mundane communication devices without accidentally broadcasting their position to hostile forces, and how to recognize humor in ways that weren't entirely lethal. Every lesson had moments of calamity, like when she tried to replicate human laughter and nearly set off the emergency oxygen mask, or when Aiden accidentally turned the hollow chessboard into a mini black hole. By the end of the week, Lysera's demeanor had softened, imperceptibly but unmistakably. She still moved with precision, still scanned every corridor for threats, but now she occasionally allowed herself to be startled by Aiden's clumsy antics rather than immediately react with lethal force. Her ears twitched in ways that suggested amusement rather than suspicion. Aiden, for his part, learned to anticipate her movements, sometimes using them to create harmless pranks that elicited brief, begrudging smiles. The turning point came on a particularly quiet evening when the shuttle passed through a corridor of asteroids. Aiden attempted a joke about asteroid insurance, expecting nothing but a cold glare. Lysera instead tilted her head and let out a sound that was almost terrifyingly close to laughter. "This is inefficient humor," she said, ears flicking with subtle amusement. "But acceptable." Aiden felt a small, warm victory. "See," he said, "we're making progress. Next step, teaching you how to properly trip over your own feet without dying." Lysera's long ears twitched again, almost like a sigh. She didn't respond, but Aiden could sense her considering the possibility that life didn't have to be only training, missions, and survival. Perhaps it could include laughter, mistakes, and, he dared to think, companionship. Somewhere between dodging rogue drones, cooking synth food, and surviving plasma storms, the warrior had begun to realize that there might be value in living beyond combat, and maybe, just maybe, that living could be shared. And in the quiet hum of the shuttle, as starlight danced across the viewport, and the universe seemed impossibly vast yet intimate, Aiden thought he saw the beginnings of something neither of them had planned. Trust, humor, and a strange, fledgling connection that could survive anything the galaxy threw at them. The rogue signal had been blaring for hours, a shrill, electronic cry bouncing off the walls of the abandoned outpost. Aiden leaned against a console, trying to look casual, though the blood of 100 battles still tingled in his veins. Lysera, standing across from him with her long ears twitching in mild agitation, scanned the signal's source with an intensity that made starship radars feel lazy. "You humans have a remarkable talent for creating chaos," she said, flicking a hand at the flickering holographic map. "And you thrive in it." Aiden grinned despite the tension. "It's a gift, mostly accidental but still a gift." The two of them had spent months traveling together, navigating asteroid fields, plasma storms, and bureaucracies that made both of them question sentient life. Through it all, Lysera had shifted from a lethal, distrustful warrior to a partner whose judgment he increasingly relied upon, and whose occasional sarcasm he now found endearing rather than intimidating. The signal led them to a derelict communication tower hovering above the atmosphere of a gas giant. Its hull was scarred, smoke curling from damaged panels, and the entire structure groaned like a dying creature. Lysera hovered over the sensors, ears flicking like antennae detecting secrets. "This is deliberate," she said. "Someone wants to be found." Aiden smirked. "Or someone really, really hates maintenance." He floated past a vent that hissed nervously. "Either way, I'm confident we can survive, probably." Inside, the tower was a maze of corridors and zero-gravity chambers. Each hallway seemed to stretch longer than physics allowed, lights flickering and giving the place the ambience of a haunted disco. Lysera moved with lethal precision, scanning every corner for threats, while Aiden tripped over a loose cable, caught himself with a grunt and muttered, "Still charming, right?" She ignored him, though the twitch of her ears betrayed a fleeting amusement. When they reached the control hub, they discovered the source of the signal. A containment chamber holding a rogue AI, one that had been manipulating systems across the quadrant, forcing miners to abandon claims and freighters to detour endlessly. The AI was clever, adaptive, and had a voice that could make a starship's metal hull shiver. "Welcome," it intoned. "You should not have come." Lysera's hand hovered over her energy blade. Aiden, meanwhile, tried to seem unthreatening, hands raised. "Hello, Mr. AI," he said. "We come in peace mostly, and with coffee if you like synth coffee. No? Okay, just checking." The AI considered this, and a low hum filled the chamber. "Peace is irrelevant," it replied. "All must obey efficiency." "Efficiency, huh?" Aiden said, tilting his head. "I think we had that lesson last week when my hollow chessboard nearly became a black hole." Lesson learned. Sometimes chaos is more efficient than control. Lysera blinked, ears twitching, and for once allowed herself a brief, amused smile. Aiden's strategy was reckless, absurd, but somehow it worked. The AI paused, evaluating. Using a combination of Lysera's combat skills and Aiden's improvisational ingenuity, they navigated the AI's defenses. Lysera disabled security turrets with calculated precision, each move a dance perfected over a lifetime of war. Aiden, in contrast, accidentally triggered several defense protocols, ducked 3 laser blasts, and pressed the wrong button enough times to overload the AI's emergency systems. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and somewhere in the chaos, Lysera laughed, a pure, unguarded sound that echoed off the metal walls. Finally, the AI was cornered. It flickered, struggled, and then went silent, contained within a holographic prism that pulsed faintly. Lysera exhaled, and Aiden patted the console. "See, teamwork. And by teamwork, I mean you did all the hard stuff and I contributed spirit." With the AI neutralized, the outpost stabilized. They left the tower together, floating through the debris-strewn void, the gas giant's clouds swirling below them like a living painting. Lysera turned to Aiden, her long ears catching stray particles of light. "You have patience," she said quietly, "and humor. I did not know such things could be valuable." Aiden shrugged, floating slightly off balance. "Humor saves lives," he said. "Also sanity, and occasionally dignity." She tilted her head, considering him, and for the first time he saw trust and something deeper reflected in her violet eyes. Their journey back to the human colony was quiet, not because danger had disappeared, but because silence had meaning now. They shared zero-gravity meals, navigated fields of cosmic debris, and laughed at the absurdity of surviving another day. Lysera even attempted her version of human humor, creating a series of awkward puns that made Aiden groan but secretly warmed his heart. By the time they approached the colony, Lysera had transformed in ways that went far beyond her appearance or martial skill. She moved with a lighter step, her ears no longer pinned in constant vigilance, but flicking with curiosity and subtle amusement. She questioned less and trusted more, her laughter becoming a natural, unguarded part of life rather than a cautious experiment. And Aiden, once a soldier who measured everything in efficiency and danger, had learned that patience, kindness, and shared absurdity could forge bonds stronger than any weapon. They landed amid the hum of activity, greeted by humans curious about the alien who had survived countless battles, and an alien colony murmuring about the human who dared teach a warrior how to live. Aiden held the door open for her, and she stepped through with a faint smile, ears twitching as she glanced back. "I suppose I could learn this companionship thing," she said, voice soft but steady. "I'd say you've got the hang of it," Aiden replied, grinning. "Next step, learning how to make toast without nearly burning down a shuttle. That one's a real challenge." Lysera's ears flicked with something almost like amusement, and she laughed, a sound mingling warmth and relief. Together they walked through the colony, a warrior and a soldier no longer defined by duty or battle, but by trust, laughter, and a life they had chosen to share. The galaxy was vast, unpredictable, and often absurd, but for the first time they felt ready to face it together. As the twin suns set on the horizon, casting long shadows across the colony's gleaming spires, Lysera tilted her head toward Aiden. "We survived," she said. "Barely," he said, "but with style." And in that moment, drifting amid stars and laughter, the war-weary alien and the human soldier knew they had rewritten their destinies, not through conflict, but through patience, humor,